Okay, call to order for the August meeting. Wendy, can you open the meeting?
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Sparta Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be advertised by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Sparta Board of Education office, 18 Mohawk Avenue, as designated by the Board of Education for posting of such notice in a public place. Written notice was emailed on January 6, 2023, to the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, tapintosparta.net, and to the Township clerk specifying the date, time, and place of this meeting.
Thank you. We all rise for a pledge of allegiance. Yep. Joanne, can we do a roll call?
Ms. Collier?
Here.
Ms. Keeling?
Here.
Mr. Knapp?
Here.
Ms. McMichael? Mr. Paleschi?
Here.
Ms. Pitzer?
Here.
Ms. Seelander?
Here.
Dr. Serrano? Mr. Morris?
Here. Okay, right now we're going to convene into closed session. Hopefully be back up by 7. In closed session, we're talking legal and personnel matters. Get a motion to go into closed session.
Motion.
Leanne, second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're reopen the meeting. Okay, before I open up public hearing.
Yeah, do a roll call.
You do a roll call, Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Here.
Ms. Keeling,
Here.
Mr. Knapp,
Here.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Peleschi,
Here.
Ms. Pitzer,
Here.
Ms. Seelander,
Here.
Dr. Serrano,
Here.
Mr. Morris.
Here. Okay, we're now going to start the public hearing on the superintendent's contract. Before we do that, I'll open up with a statement. I'm very pleased to report that the Sparta School District community, that the Board of Education and Dr. Beck have come to terms on a new 5-year employment contract for Dr. Beck, with Dr. Beck's current contract expiring at the end of the school year. The board decided that it was a good idea to reopen this contract in order to ensure that we retain him. The board will be voting shortly on the new contract, which has already been approved by the Executive County Superintendent of Schools as fully compliant and applicable statutes and regulations. The law requires that we have a public hearing on the contract before the board votes on it. This simply means the public is able to provide its input on the contract which has been posted on our website. Before I open the floor to public input, I wish to highlight some key contract terms. They are as follows. We're going to rescind Dr. Beck's current contract, which expires June 30th, 2024, and replace it with a new 5-year contract for the term retroactive to July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2028. Dr. Beck will receive his current base salary of $204,422, which is subject to 2.75% increase in each year thereafter. This is less than his current 4% increase set forth in his contract. In this contract, which will result in savings to the district. All the other terms of the contract remain the same as his current contract, except that we've removed the tuition reimbursement provision. In conclusion, we believe that the contract is not only a win for the board and Dr. Beck, but also provides us the stability we need to continue to serve our students and our school district. The board retains a very valued and respected superintendent, and Dr. Beck is paid fairly and competitively as compared to his superintendent colleagues. We are proud of this deal and delighted that Mr. Beck is committed to stay with us for at least 5 more years. I will now open the floor for public comment on his new contract. Public comments will work as they do in other public comments. Come up, sign in, state your name, address, so on and so forth. You'll get 3 minutes, and you'll have 1 time to speak. Okay. Oh.
Hi, Jennifer Grana, for Woodbine Lane. I appreciate the opening statement because one of my questions was going to be how this all kind of came about, and that's very, very helpful for clarification. So my other question was just going to come up to ask the board members, when you do cast your vote, to please consider being very transparent about why you're voting the way you are. No disrespect to Dr. Beck in the past couple of years, but I found it interesting that you used the term stability, considering that it's been a little tumultuous since his first day. Knowing perhaps there may be things that have happened behind the scenes that you found very valuable, I think it would be really helpful as a member of the public to hear them if you find that there are specific instances that maybe we're not aware of, or maybe we're just focusing on negative things. And if you have positive things you wanted to communicate, that would be really helpful tonight, because this is one of those votes that's really, really big. And there have been votes in the past where votes have been cast without explanation that kind of leaves us a little bit lost. So this is one where I hope that you really take the time to explain during discussion if you feel the need to. That would help us have some transparency. Since the beginning of his term, for lack of a better word. According even to your minutes, if I'm correct, our rankings have kind of started to slowly drop. Just looking at the overload stipends that you may have to approve tonight, in the high school alone, that total is almost $475,000, which is indicative of the fact that we cannot get teachers to take jobs here. All of the things that we're concerned about happening are happening. So, however, I do want to say that knowing you don't have to make this decision tonight is kind of a positive thing. So when you're thinking about how you're going to vote, I just hope that you are thoughtful about the fact that you...
1 minute.
Thank you. That you can also just make this decision in March. It doesn't really have to be made tonight. Knowing that, on the positive flip side, in the next 7 months, maybe some really positive things will happen, and maybe you'll have more to go on by then. And a no vote tonight isn't necessarily any disrespect to Dr. Beck, in my opinion. It's really more of like, why don't we just wait and see, considering the situation we're in. Unprecedented tax hikes that have never been seen in history of Sparta School District or in the town, and skyrocketing legal fees, staff controversies, and the like. I know that it seems to be common practice for superintendents to renew their contract early or extend it early, but I feel like now in Sparta, we don't really need common practice as much as really, really thoughtful decision-making and really transparent voting from you all. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Is there anybody else?
Motion to close.
Okay, got a motion to close public comment.
Motion.
Thanks, Craig. Second?
Second.
Just to, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Just to comment on Jen's comment on overloads. Her comment on overloads, all those overloads, or if not all, the majority are contractual. And they're going through phases to get up to the special education overloads to meet what the contract reads. For the majority of them. Not all, but for the majority.
Okay.
And I'll get a motion to vote on the contract.
Motion.
What about discussion?
Yep.
After the motion.
After second.
Okay.
You
Sorry.
want to second the motion?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Yes, I'd like to, I have a statement prepared, if I may read it, please.
Go ahead.
The superintendent's contract is not contractually due to be reopened until March 30th, 2024, which is the state-mandated 90 days prior to the end of his current contract on June 30th, 2024. The board majority has decided to do this 7 months prematurely. I do not feel this represents the wishes of the majority of constituents in Sparta. I cannot support this renewal for the following reasons. In an unprecedented vote, which I did not support, the board majority passed a budget recommended by the superintendent where taxes were tripled to 5.8% versus the typical cap of 2.0%. This tax hike has nothing to do with inflation. If it was inflation-related, every district in the state would be seeing their taxes tripled. While personnel restructuring and revisions occurred as a result of the budget, the superintendent still has not provided the public with detailed information regarding these changes. When over $1 million in staff restructuring and revisions occur, I believe the taxpayers of Sparta deserve to be told explicitly what was done. To date, a detailed breakdown of how these funds were cut has not been made public from the administration despite public requests. While I understand that continuity is important, it is not more important than the quality of education our students are receiving. Test scores and Sparta state rankings have declined, both of which are a direct reflection of how our students are doing. These declines are not necessarily a result of COVID either, because the entire state went through the same pandemic that Sparta did. Academics must be prioritized above all else. Declining rankings also directly impact property values. The major issues of overcrowding at Alpine and the outdated state of facilities at all of our elementary schools have still not been resolved. We need a plan and have needed a plan for countless years. The administration committed to provide a hybrid option for the sex ed curriculum. This did not occur, which let down countless families and ended up giving those families who opted out an inequitable education experience. In effect, students on the opt-out list were penalized. Reappointing the superintendent with a 5-year contract is no small vote. Typically, rewarding a superintendent with this type of contract comes on the heels of substantial merit. To my colleagues voting yes to support this, I would truly appreciate an explanation as to why you are, in fact, supporting it. For all of these reasons, I cannot support this resolution. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I also have a statement prepared.
Is your mic on?
Voting for the superintendent is one of the most important roles that we have as a Board of Ed. Dr. Beck has certainly grown in his roles since coming to Sparta, and he came during a difficult time in the midst of a pandemic. Even with his accomplishments as our superintendent, I still have reservations. The first being the budget, which caused a substantial increase in our taxes, which I also voted against. I was also not impressed with the messy rollout of the new health and PE standards. It lacked organization and transparency. Our district's test scores and school ranking have declined over the years. And even though COVID was uncharted territory for us all, Sparta went beyond executive orders with rules for volunteers and keeping our students out of the classroom longer than most schools in the county. Please understand this decision is grounded in various factors that I believe are essential for the direction in which I envision the district moving. It is in every way, in every sense, a business decision and in no way personal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anybody else? Okay, if there's no one else.
Oh, I was
Oh,
gonna
you're
say.
good.
So obviously, this is a vote that we do take very seriously, and I take to heart, the feelings of my colleagues as well as that of the public. I personally have seen, while I can't sit here and give evaluation remarks in a public setting, I hope it's okay to say that I have seen a lot of growth, and I also have seen us learning together as a board, and also Dr. Beck. I think, Ms. Grana's usage of the word tumultuous is, yes, it's granted. I mean, he came in at a very tumultuous time, and having to start his tenure here in the very unprecedented times that we were facing with COVID. And if we could go back, maybe some of the calls would have been different. Maybe we would have done some things differently. But I do see a man who's very committed to our district, who wants to be here. I have learned, through board training and things like that, looking at other districts that have had high success and rankings, is that continuum of leadership can't be underestimated. The value that it brings not only to our staff, but also to our students and our families. And I've seen a commitment from Dr. Beck when I have brought concerns. We haven't always seen eye to eye, but I feel like when I brought concerns on things that maybe we could consider, how do we do it better? How do we make sure that if the budget wasn't delivered in a way that everybody felt there was consensus, or there was parts that are unclear, what can we do better next year? What can we work on now to improve? And I've seen that collaboration and commitment from you, and I'm also realistic of the times that we're in, that it would be imprudent, I feel, to wait until 90 days before a contract expires, because not only would it be unfair to Dr. Beck and his family, it would say to any other superintendent who might be interested in coming here that we have a Board of Education that would wait until the very last minute and drop the ground beneath you. And I don't think that's what any of us would want in our own employment, or to have with others. It's not only is it not uncommon, but I think it's a prudent service, because also if say the board wanted to have another superintendent, we would need to start that process much before March. And it's not easy to get a good superintendent, let alone someone who wants to be here. I feel the terms are very fair considering our financial situation, and I appreciate Dr. Beck's fairness in that. The only other thing I was going to say is just in regards to, yes, the budget increase was, when we looked at it, I'm speaking incorrectly, the 5.86%, but we know when we looked at ratables that equated to something like an actual, like a 3.2%, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, and it was increasing the average household to $21.49 a month for the 23-24 budget versus $17.10 a month in the 22-23 budget. And I would argue that not eliminating any programs, retaining essential staff, finding breakage after the fact to bring back a part-time nurse, a commitment also to making the new school or some kind of overcrowding solution happen, that those are important things to consider, along with the record, talk about tumultuous, but record-breaking costs that we are increasing across transportation, across benefits, across serving students of all populations and doing it well. So for that reason, I'm supporting Dr. Beck tonight.
Just real quick. It's nice to get a notification before, but I mean, that's just the majority of the world doesn't work that way. And the fact that we have an election coming up, we never should have opened this up at this point, because you have 3 people potentially coming on the board that aren't going to have the vote. I think it was premature. We should have waited until after the election. It's too soon. We still would have had plenty of time for Dr. Beck, to make his evaluation. And I expressed this to Dr. Beck before, my thoughts on contracts being open. It's just not something I believe in. It's premature. Whether it was, 90 days or until I thought it should have been until after the election, and you have the new board members that could have made the vote as well. I'm kind of a lame duck person making this vote myself, because I'm not going to be running next year. But I'd be interested in hearing the rest of the board members too, and what their thoughts are on why we're going to be opening up the contract and making it 5 years, longer than a 3-year contract. It just seems like a very long commitment. And we have had a lot of tumultuous things happen, as Ms. Grana mentioned, that I think there is more time that's needed to be taken under consideration. So myself, I will be voting no tonight.
I mean, I'm gonna echo a lot of what Lauren said. When I was the board president last year, and being able to work very closely with Dr. Beck, and coming onto the board fairly soon after, it was a couple months after Dr. Beck came, and seeing the issues that the district was dealing with at that time, and again, I understand everybody had to deal with COVID, but dealing with COVID. And seeing Dr. Beck's commitment and his dedication, and listen, I mean, everybody has things to learn. We have things to learn as board members all the time, and it's a continued evolution in a position, and I've seen that the beginnings of that evolution, and again, the 5-year piece of it, having that stability for the district, and it's important. It's important. So for all those reasons, that's why I'm going to be supporting the contract tonight.
For me, Dr. Beck, this is my 3rd superintendent that I've been working for. Is that better? Yes. Okay. For me, this is the 3rd superintendent that I've been with, and being with 3 and working with 3, he is by far, in my eyes, better of the other 2 that I've worked with. No disrespect to them, just being honest. And being in a position, I know this is a voting year and it's an election year, but right now, I think this puts this board in a great position and opportunity to retain him as well as the new board coming on, whoever that may be. And I feel it's good for the district going forward. So with that, I support. Anybody else?
I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, Kurt. I concur. A lot of what Lauren said, Craig said, and Dr. Beck, your willingness always to listen to what we have to say and take into consideration, our suggestions, critiques. So I am voting yes.
All right, I guess I'm the last man standing. With everything that Vanessa, Kurt, Craig, and Lauren has to say, I don't really have much to add to that. I will be supporting this contract for all the reasons that they stated. Like Lauren said, we can't get up here and provide any sort of evaluation in this public forum. But not only does he take our advice and our ideas, I know that he listens to the public as well, which is something that our district was lacking in previous superintendents, which I think is incredibly, incredibly important. And I think that, like I said, I don't really have much to add aside from what everyone else who is supporting him has said. They really have summed up all the reasons why those of us who are supporting his contract are going to support his contract.
Okay, I'm going to guess there's no one else at this point. All right, could I get a motion to vote on 2.2? Well, it's different. Roll call, Joanne.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Keeling?
Respectfully, no.
Mr. Knapp?
No.
Ms. McMichael? Mr. Paleski?
Yes?
Ms. Pitzer?
No.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on. We have recognition. No. Okay, presentations. Yep, we have Tara, presentations.
All right, good evening, everybody. I want to first let you know that this presentation was posted at the start of this meeting to our website. So if you go to district presentations, you can find the link there now in case it's easier for you to see that way. So we are looking at our NJGPA results that took place. Those assessments were administered in last spring of 2023. NJGPA stands for the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, and this is the first year that that assessment is a mandated graduation pathway. So the first administration of that assessment was field tested and was a way to get feedback on student information and kind of learn from the test administration and then make corrections and alterations as needed. So the statute does require that we have a graduation proficiency assessment. And again, this is the first year that this does count as one of the pathways. In addition to this graduation pathway, there are 2 other pathways, and that's been something that also is a common practice when it comes to standardized assessments and graduation pathways. So you could either score a proficient score on the NJGPA, you can retake the NJGPA, or you can meet those cut scores by several other different assessment measures like ACTs, SATs, PSATs, or a portfolio appeal. I think one thing that's important to note that we'll probably speak to as we move through the presentation is that this particular assessment focuses on 2 components, English language arts and also math. Last year, after they received the proficiency rates from the field-tested assessment, the cut scores were changed in the state of New Jersey. So they actually lowered the cut scores, which now aligns with recommendations from the psychometricians, the NJDOE, testing vendors, and also is a result of the outcomes from the field test results. So I'm going to talk about a lot of growth tonight, and I'm going to celebrate that. I think it's really important when we're talking about test scores and rankings, which we're happy to continue to speak to. It's important to use real data to bring that to our attention so we're on the same page about what we're using as metrics and measurements. When we look at NJGPA, the slide you're looking at right now looks at the language arts and math proficiency percentages. So in the first column, you can look at, there's two ways of, there's two categories for proficiency results. So you're either graduation ready or you're not graduation ready. In English language arts, we have 93.8% of our students are graduation ready, compared to the state level, which is 80.5% of students are graduation ready. And then you can see in the last two columns, of course, the difference, students who are not graduation ready as compared in our district relative to that in the state. In math, 77.9% of our students are graduation ready, compared to 55% of students in the state. When we look at this slide here, we're taking a look at specifically our English language arts outcomes. And so we're comparing the year of 2022 to the year of 2023. Remember that 2022 was a field test year, and the cut scores were lowered to reflect the recommended cut scores. So that was a change, which, in addition to several other variables, have us performing this year in terms of our graduation ready percentages, again at 93.8%. So there's a significant increase. When we look at math, we see the same thing. Again, spring 2022, we were at 70.2% graduation ready, compared to spring of 2023, 77.9% graduation ready. I also think it's really important to note that when we talk about college and career readiness, that's our ultimate overall goal all of the time, to make sure that our students are prepared. That's what the state standards are in place for. That's what we're ultimately trying to do, is to ensure that we have productive, intellectual, responsible students, children, citizens, engaging in our society. And so when we look at an assessment like the NJGPA and we're looking at graduation ready, this is one of our ultimate outcomes, is to ensure that students are ready to move on and college and career prepared. This chart takes a look at our subgroups. So the chart on the left looks at math, and there are three core subgroups that are identified. When we look at English language learners, which are now multilingual learners, is how we speak to that student population, acknowledging that they know many languages. We don't have enough students who took that assessment to be able to report out on them. So you'll see in both charts, there's not a reporting field for those students. When we look at our economically disadvantaged students, we see that the column to the right, we have 42.9% who are graduation ready. Last year, the number next to that is that we had 50% of students in our subgroup for economically disadvantaged for math who are graduation ready. For our students with disabilities, we currently have 40% of that population at this grade level that are college and career ready, and that's a comparison of 16.7% last year. Moving over to the chart where we look at our ELA proficiencies, economically disadvantaged, the column to the right, 100% of our students are graduation ready in ELA, and that's a major difference in the comparison to last year where we were at 28.6%. Our students with disabilities for ELA, that subpopulation is performing at 90% proficiency as compared to last year, which was 7.9% proficiency. So in kind of culmination and reflection, tonight, I really want to celebrate our students. This data and these numbers, when we look at them in charts, they look like numbers and percentages and comparisons, but they are a reflection of our kids and the fact that they are recovering in this post-pandemic world from an incredibly challenging time that we were all faced with. We see that growth not only in assessments like NJGPA, but we see growth in everything we're doing where we're collecting data. We see growth on our internal universal screeners like STAR. We've seen in our first collection of NJSLA assessment scores that is not completely released yet, so I'll be presenting on that in the coming months. We've seen nice growth there. But we also see growth in the way they're functioning and participating in the world around them and in our school communities. We see growth when we look at our students in their co-curricular clubs and the accolades that they win or acquire, new organizations that were put forth, things like the Academic Bowl, the Robotics Club, our music department, the archery team. I mean, this is where we see kids excelling constantly, and that spans one arena to the next, and that is in addition and beyond something that is measured on a test. So I'm really proud of our kids. I think they're doing an amazing job. I'm excited about the growth that they're showing. When we make decisions about students, or when we make decisions about anything, we're always talking about kids. That is like the core of every conversation we have. And I can say in working at several other districts, sometimes that gets lost when you're in an office. And there are other things that impact decision-making, and that's not the case here. That's not the case with the staff that we work with. That's not the case with our administrative team. So I'm really grateful and inspired to be a part of that. We're going to continue to unpack this data. There are additional reports that we can look at that NJGPA provides us with, things that allow us to drill down into the standards to see what areas still need support. We can look at sub-areas of reporting, so we can take a look at language arts and see how kids did in the area of literacy, informational text, or vocabulary, for example. And, you know, we're going to continue to focus on the whole child. We're going to continue to make sure that our students have things to be passionate about, that they're excited about learning, that they're excited about being in our school environments, because what we know is when you look at research, when students have a passion or an interest in one particular area, it becomes transferable in everything that they do. And so we're going to use data, and we're going to look at their academic growth, proficiencies, and performance, but we're also going to look at things that get them excited and that enhance their experiences as learners in our school community. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Do you all have any questions for me?
Oh, thank you.
I have one question for you, Mrs. Rossi. Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
One question regarding the economically disadvantaged students. Do you know if the state will be providing aid specifically for that subgroup to help if there's extra tutoring, like some of the
Yeah, I'm going to
programs
speak
that are
about
going
that
on?
actually in my report, but there is, I have it over there, a high impact tutoring grant, which will help us to continue to focus on some of those subgroups and making sure that we have equitable supports and additional supports to the greatest extent possible for every learner and their diverse needs. Thanks, Lauren.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
To you too.
Thank you, Tara.
Good evening. So I was not as proactive as Ms. Rossi. I did not post this ahead of time at the start of the meeting, but this will be posted. I will forward it to our tech crew, and this will be posted tomorrow. This is the Sparta Township Public Schools Communication Action Plan. This is part of the ongoing strategic plan that we've been working on, that I've been citing throughout board meetings, providing updates on where we are with the strategic plan. I stated last board meeting that the communication plan was done, but we just had to put it together. So in between meetings, we put it together and came up with the communication action plan. And I have other updates when it comes to other parts of the strategic plan during my superintendent report. But this is now completed. So the purpose of this communication plan, by working toward the completion of the goals and objectives outlined in this plan, the Sparta Township Public School District will successfully create and maintain comprehensive communication strategies to engage and inform key stakeholders, the main objective of the communication plan. The process, how did we end up with a completed communication plan? So back in the 21-22 school year, we engaged in strategic planning, as I'm sure you all recall. One of the recommendations that came out of strategic planning was that we improve communications. And that was the recommendation that was made. How do we improve communications? It was the admin team's idea, central office's idea, to come up with a communications inventory and a communications action plan. So what we did was we engaged a communications consultant, and that consultant worked very closely with administration to take a communications inventory. How do we communicate? What methods do we use to communicate? How often do we communicate? Why do we communicate? Why don't we communicate? All those questions were asked and answered. And then if you recall, as a community and as a staff, there were surveys that went out, and all of these stakeholders were engaged in different surveys. The staff, administrators, the Board of Ed, and the parents and the community. Also, there were focus groups that were formed, and those focus groups met with our consultant and offered feedback as well. The result of the inventory and the result of the plan is the consultant, along with the admin team, came up with recommended goals, objectives, and actions. There are 3 broad major goals, which I'll get to. There are 18 objectives, which are subpoints under those goals, and there are 91 different actions. I'm not going to go through the 91 actions tonight, I promise you. I'm just trying to give you an overview tonight. But to show how detailed it is, there are 91 actions that come out of this action plan that we will be implementing. So the draft came over from the consultant, and it had all the goals, it had all the objectives, and it had all the actions. And it was the admin team's job to sit down and say, who is responsible for these actions, and what is the timeline on these actions? And that's what we did between last month and this month. And we made sure of those 91 actions. That's a lot of actions. I asked the admin team multiple times, are there any actions that you feel should not be in here, that they're not doable? And I believe we only crossed out maybe 2 actions that just did not fit our school district. Other than that, we kept all of the rest of the actions that were recommended. So here's the positive feedback that came. This is based on the consultant's report. The positive feedback that came is that Sparta Township Public School District is known by many as having a strong reputation for academic success. The Sparta Township Public School District provides rigorous academics, a range of services and activities for all learners, and focus group participants noted an improvement in the timeliness and trustworthiness of communication from district leadership. And the opportunities for improvement, of course, when you undergo this process, you have to be able to accept there's going to be some criticism, there's going to be room to improve, so let's work with that. Opportunities for improvement. An opportunity exists to establish more consistent communication with parents and staff, particularly during a crisis or incident. Sparta Township Public School District staff and parents indicated that more communications regarding district finances and related issues could be provided, and the district staff indicated there's insufficient communication about student success and achievement. Of course, those are broad statements that were drilled down when we get into the actual action plan. Here are the 3 goals that came of the communication plan. Goal number 1, establish an internal communications program to create a more connected and informed school community. Number 2, engage in strategic communication with external stakeholders to strengthen community relations. And goal number 3, review and update crisis communication plans. Internal, external, crisis communication, 3 goals. And here comes the bigger plan. So, as I said before, under the goals, there were objectives. I did include all of the objectives that were included in the draft. What I didn't include, again, is all the sample actions, because that would be 91. I'm not even going to read all of these to you this evening, but you can see what the objectives are and samples that go under that. So what I did was I took one objective and there was a bunch of actions under that objective. I included one that kind of summarized, gave you a good idea of what that might mean. So you'll see one objective, one sample action. But again, there's a lot more sample actions. So the objectives: create a connected school community. Internally, again, focus on internal communications for goal 1 with effective communication practices. Develop an employee relations program and a committee to foster motivation and employee wellness. Deliver timely communication responses using appropriate communication methods. Increase business office and HR communications. Clarify roles and responsibilities of administrators. Provide opportunities for ongoing two-way communication, and evaluate and refine the onboarding process for new hires. A lot of this stuff some of this stuff was actually, we were already working on it when it came out. But again, what this is based on, what these objectives are based on, is the feedback internally, in this case, feedback from the staff and administrators about how we can improve our communications internally. And you can see the sample actions off to the side. Again, I'm not going to read through those word for word, but these are measures that we will take to improve internal communications, as that was one of the major areas of feedback for improvement. This is the external communications, the external stakeholders, to strengthen community relations. Objectives here: establish a public relations plan, share positive district news and accomplishments directly with external stakeholders, increase district social media presence, maximize website experience for all users. Some of these things have already been talked about in our ad hoc communications committee, which we were already working on. Streamline communication with parents. Strengthen community connections by sharing information. Focus on providing a high level of customer service, and increase the use of video when telling the district story. So those are all the main objectives under engaging the external stakeholders. And the sample actions, you can see samples of the actions off to the side. And when we went through this as an admin team, in the chart, we relegated the responsibility. So some of this stuff will be the responsibility of central office. Some of this stuff will be the responsibility of the principals only. Some of this stuff will be the responsibility of the entire admin team, which includes VPs, supervisors, directors, central office, principals. So again, that more detailed plan is what we worked off of. And lastly, review and update crisis communication plans. This was a lot shorter of a section. To review and update the crisis communication plan, identify primary and secondary point persons for emergency communications, and update internal and external contacts twice per year. And again, we have been doing many of these things and many of the sample actions that took place under this goal, but it was important to include it in the plan and to keep us focused. The timeline on most of these things, most of these items, most of these actions can be completed rather quickly. Some of them, I don't want to minimize them by saying that they're simple, but they can be completed, they can be executed quickly as we enter the school year. Many of them. Some of them might take a couple months. Some of them might take till the middle of the year, but I don't think that there was any sample actions. I could be wrong, maybe one or two. I don't think there was any sample actions that were not going to be completed by midwinter, let's say. So this communications action plan was put together over about a year's time, and it took about a month to complete it after it was proposed to us, and it's going to take anywhere from weeks to months to actually execute every sample action item, but it will be. It gives us something to focus on. It gives us direction when it comes to communications. We all know, regardless of how well any school district, and our school district, myself included, regardless of how well we think we communicate, there's always room for improvement, and that's what this communication plan is going to do. It's going to keep us on track to make sure that we are continually improving and continually hitting these actions. So again, that's an overview of the plan. And with that, I would field any questions pertaining to the plan.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And it will be posted tomorrow.
Okay, moving on to student representatives. Matt?
Yes, excuse me while I find my spot here. Yeah, so the student representatives, we have new student representatives for this school year. I saw Chad here. Chad is no longer serving with us as a student rep. We have new student reps for the school year. They are Sarah Weisbeck and Parker Hine. And I would like to thank Ms. DeLucia for running the student council elections and simultaneously running the student council elections with knowing that those would be our representatives. The outcome of the election would be our representatives. So thank you, Ms. DeLucia, for that.
They'll start next meeting.
Yes, they will start in September. I already reached out to them, emailed them, copied Angela. We're going to meet. Ms. Rossi and I will meet with them and just go over how the board functions and what their role will be on the board, and they will be here for the September meeting.
Okay. Create a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
Thank you. Lauren, second.
Second.
Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Pleshy,
I'm going to abstain just because I wasn't here last month.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Superintendent's reports.
Thank you. I would like to start the report by thanking the board members who supported my contract this evening. By supporting my continued leadership in our district, you have supported the continued progress of our district. You have also voted in favor of consistency and stability. Our district has seen a lot of turnover at the superintendent position, with 4 superintendents since the 16-17 school year. There have also been 3 assistant superintendents since the 17-18 school year, 4 business administrators since the 16-17 school year, and 6 high school principals since the 12-13 school year. That's a lot of turnover in top positions in the district. Additionally, since the date I was appointed in March of 2021, there have been 18 different Board of Education members. In order to continue the forward progress of our district for our students, stability and leadership is imperative, and I would like to thank you for your continued support. I would like to note some agenda revisions tonight, and this usually, and as I said to the board today, this almost never happens, but we had some absences within the central office over the past couple of days, and some things fell through the cracks. Thank you for those that pointed it out. Let me point out the revisions this night to reflect in the minutes and what you will be voting on. 16.4, appointments. Ms. Eklund should be assigned to kindergarten, not second grade. Not second grade. And I emailed this to the board earlier today if you didn't see it. When it comes to the overload stipends, there was a discrepancy. There was error, actually typos. All 100% overload stipends should be at the rate of $12,623. In 16.27, the SHS co-curricular advisors, the jazz band coordinator, Ms. Giannuzzi, should include a longevity amount of $475. There was no longevity in there. Mr. Merrill's longevity stipend should be in the amount of $112.50 for the DECA assistant position. And 17.1, field trips. Even though the marching band competitions were submitted as field trips, they are competitions, not field trips. Therefore, they are funded by the board, not parent funded. Moving on to retirements, I would like to begin by acknowledging the 2 retirements that appear on this evening's agenda. The first is that of Mr. Michael Gregory, who has served the Sparta School District for 23 years. And also Ms. Christine DeMay has submitted her retirement letter after serving our district for 9 years as the assistant BA. Both of these retirements take effect on January 1st, and we wish Mr. Gregory and Ms. DeMay all the best in their upcoming retirement. New Jersey School Board's presentation. I'm pleased to announce that our behavioral threat assessment team leadership submitted a proposal to present our practices at this year's New Jersey School Boards Association workshop, and were selected to present at the statewide workshop in Atlantic City in October. I've been sharing the progress and accolades of our BTAM for almost a year, as we have remained on the forefront of this initiative. On this evening's agenda, you will see the second reading of the policy and the first reading of the regulation that mandates the implementation of these teams in school districts, effective for this school year. Our BTAM has been running strong for a year now, and I would like to once again acknowledge the leadership of Dr. Esposito, Dr. Lorenz, and the rest of the BTAM for all their continued hard work. Speaking of that regulation, you'll see something different on tonight's agenda. I'd like to explain it. The suspension of bylaw 0131. The BTAM regulation, as well as the sick leave law, are on this evening's agenda under a resolution that temporarily suspends Board of Education bylaw 0131. Which mandates that all policies and regulations are passed with 2 readings. This bylaw may be suspended under emergency circumstances, and in this case, Strauss S. may release these policies and regulations in accordance with recently passed statutes. which are mandated for the start of the 23-24 school year and are therefore time sensitive. While it is rare that such a suspension of the bylaw takes place, it has taken place at one point when the HIB law changed in a short amount of time and needed to be implemented. It was time sensitive, as well as the COVID-induced policy and regulation that allowed for remote meetings, which was an emergent and time sensitive situation. Those are just two examples of when bylaw 0131 would ever be suspended. It would have to be very special circumstances, time sensitive, emergent circumstances, and that's why you see that on the agenda as such tonight. Archery update. I'd like to once again thank the HMS archery team for their presentation at last month's board meeting. In an effort to keep their success moving at the next level, Ms. Rossi and I have been working with staff members and administration to work out the operational logistics of possibly providing this program at SMS in the upcoming school year. While there are still some obstacles to overcome, we are working diligently to continue to expand this successful program. We will continue to look at the operational logistics to see if we can, in fact, make this happen for this upcoming school year. Air purifiers. I'm pleased to announce that the Sparta School District was a recipient of 300 air purifiers, enough for every classroom in the district, through the New Jersey Department of Health School HEPA program. Thank you to Ms. Black and Mr. Tappan for their hard work on applying for and obtaining this grant. Those air purifiers, that grant was offered to school districts throughout the state. Those air purifiers actually arrived yesterday on 40 pallets, which was not something the custodial staff and maintenance staff was looking forward to at this point of the summer. But I'll tell you what, we toured 3 buildings today, and they were broken down. The boxes were broken down. And they were moved into a lot of the classrooms already. So even though the maintenance staff and custodial staff were very busy over the summer, as you can imagine, they took that time and were able to get those air purifiers into the room. In fact, you see boxes sitting back there in the corner of some of the air purifiers for this building. The pre-K expansion grant, also on the topic of grants, I mentioned in last month's meeting that we would be submitting an application for the state's pre-K expansion program, and we were able to submit that grant on August 10th. This grant would supply funding for expanding our pre-K program and offer it to more of our residents free of charge. We hope to learn the results of our application in the coming weeks. I would like to thank Dr. Castorina, Ms. Black, Ms. Rossi, Ms. Madsen, and Mr. Miller for their work on that application. The gist of the application is expanding into already existing facilities, partnering with town facilities, or possibly facilities within your own district that you're not using, rooms that you're not using within your own district, to expand that grant to, that maybe finances were holding up that progress. That's what the grant is designed for. Last week, our principal team, as well as our BTAM leadership, met with the Sparta Police Department leadership in our annual meeting to renew the Law Enforcement Memorandum of Agreement, which is on this evening's agenda for approval. We discussed other pertinent matters relating to school security, communications, and our facilities. I would like to thank Chief McCarrick, Lieutenant Snyder, Lieutenant Carberry, Sergeant Detective Haslock, and School Resource Officer DeWald for meeting with us that day and for their continued support and commitment to the safety of our students and staff. As I've stated before, we are all quite fortunate to live and work in a community with such a strong relationship between the police department and the school district. Rewinding for a second back to air purifiers and air quality. As has been our annual practice since I arrived in the district, our annual random air quality tests took place in each of the buildings last week. The results of those tests were returned early this week, and I'm pleased to announce that all tests once again came back with no failed results. More on the strategic plan update. An update to our district strategic plan. As you can see, the communication plan is moving along. We met with our technology audit and plan consultant this week, actually yesterday, to keep that goal moving with their formal report coming in the next few weeks, and a formal technology plan being created in the next month or two based on the formal report from the consultant, as well as the district-wide inventory that I spoke about previously. Also, the principals will engage their respective school-based strategic planning teams in the coming weeks, and they will update and revise their building goals as necessary and reflect those updates and revisions in the Gantt charts on our website. Update on new school. After exhausting our options for new properties to build a new school, we have begun to hone in on utilizing one of our existing district properties for district expansion. This exploration is still in its preliminary stages, but it shows strong signs of promise and encouragement. We acknowledge that the process will take some time, and the board, Ms. Black, and I have come to the conclusion that we cannot continue to explore properties for any more of an extended amount of time, and we need to focus on a property and begin the next stages of this process in the near future. Lastly, I would like to welcome everybody to the 23-24 school year. I wish nothing but the best to our students, staff, and families as we enter another school year in our wonderful district. As we continue to support one another throughout the year, we will continue to make great strides for all of our students. And I would like to turn it over to Ms. Rossi for a few updates as well.
Okay, great. I wanted to follow up on something we were just talking a little bit about, Lauren. The state is offering a new grant opportunity. We are in the process of pursuing it. It's called the New Jersey Learning Acceleration Program, which is a high impact tutoring grant. It prioritizes students in grades 3 and 4, but it does allow you to serve additional students as needed. And there was some different conversation I just saw on some forums online, but one of the reasons it prioritizes students in grades 3 and 4 is because nationally those were the students who were impacted most as they were kindergartners, first graders during the start of COVID when interrupted learning really began. One of the things we're doing right now is we're currently exploring vendors and the various ways that they can support these needs, which have been compiled on an approved vendor list. So we are looking at their functionality and how they can work with the district and, of course, costs involved. There was an enormous amount of curriculum work or summer curriculum review, program review work this summer. I want to thank all of our teachers and faculty. Without them and without their support and without their dedication, we would not be able to achieve the things we do, especially over the summer. There's a lot that gets accomplished over the summer months. I want to specifically just quickly acknowledge our staff members who've been working on the New Jersey Tiered Support Early Reading Grant. There's been a lot of work that's been completed that we are in the prepare phase under the topics of foundational knowledge and universal screenings. We have had meetings and we've actually had opportunities to even interact with other districts who are implementing the grant. One of the things that we are going to do is create a landing page on our website. So I'll share that information so we can begin compiling information to keep people informed of where we are in the process and things that evolve as a result of the grant. One thing that you'll see in the assessment letter that we're mandated to send out at the beginning of the year is a change of one of our universal assessment screeners, which will be DIBELS. DIBELS is an assessment that gives us high-quality information on specific early literacy skills that will help us provide focused instruction. So that will be culminated on a landing page for you to review. In addition to that, we did meet with our Health and PE Committee, Curriculum Committee, and we're also going to develop a landing page for that. We tracked feedback from all stakeholders over the course of the school year. We reviewed that feedback. We reviewed our programs, and we are going to provide the results of our community and student survey, along with additional pieces of information. Some are new, some are old, that at least can be stored in one landing place for continued transparency that include things like the descriptions and names of the options that families have and what's entailed in each option. Just to conclude, I want to do the same. I want to welcome our staff back. I want to start by letting them know that I hope they enjoy the last few days of summer, but we are really looking forward to having them back in the district, our staff and our students. It's a really quiet place without them. And to our families and to our parents and guardians, we're here to support you throughout the year. So, of course, attending these meetings is a helpful place to interact and dialogue, but, whatever you need in terms of reaching out to us, of course, chain of command for support, but we're always here to, honor your requests and support your families and, all of the different things that you might need feedback or information on. So have a great school year.
Okay, moving on. I get a motion to move 12.1, the HIB report.
Motion.
Craig, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Leanne. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Paleski,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Okay, 13.1, communications. I do have something here. The board received an email last week, and the sender wished to be addressed at the board meeting and acknowledged of the email. The email's from a Mrs., I'm going to take a stab at it, Masarowski. Just to sum up the email, she was unhappy with a robotic baby being sent home. It was very terrifying and detrimental to the family. I don't really know the outcome or the reasoning, but thanks for the email. Everyone received it, yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Delegate liaison reports. The town council liaison report, we're set to meet, go over a couple things. We're still waiting on permits, final. We did receive some paperwork for the path to be done between the football field and the track. That is in the closing stages, yes?
Yes.
So hopefully that'll be done as soon as possible. And we're setting up meetings, just trying to work some things out with them and us to get a date to move forward with some other projects. Anybody else?
I just have a reminder for Sparta Education Foundation this coming Saturday is the tournament at Station Park, so please come out and support.
Lauren?
I just wanted to acknowledge I attended a curriculum meeting this, because there was an opening in this past this past week. I'm trying to think when that was, sorry. And I just wanted to thank Mrs. Rossi and Dr. Beck for that productive conversation we had regarding rankings. If you're anyone like me, you're always on Zillow, and you may have noticed that great schools had moved some of our rankings around, not just us, but people around the district, people around the state, really. And we discussed how a lot of what they were acting upon was really inaccurate information, and ways that we could maybe reach out and collaborate with them as a tool to correct some of the information, but also just noting some of the good rankings that we are also receiving that are much more favorable through niche.com or U.S. News and World Report. So it was informative for me as both a community member and a board member just to see that, some of these third parties, there's a lot beyond the number, but obviously we take into consideration as a board because people do evaluate sometimes by what they're just seeing on a website. So we will continue to partner in ways that we can address that. So that's reflected in our notes.
Thank you, Lauren. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to public comment number 1. Public comments are invited on all matters pertaining to only action items at this time. Please state the action number as well as your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate. For the record, each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. Once you have your allotted 3 minutes to speak, you will not be permitted to speak again until public comment number 2. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The Board of Administration may or may not respond to any questions or comments in conclusion of public participation.
So Caitlin Gagnon, Summit Road, Sparta. I'm speaking primarily to 2.2, which is the contract. So just a few things. For the 2 of the 3 who voted no, I keep hearing the mention of the budget as part of the reasoning. I also heard the sex ed curriculum and standards, and I guess some form of retaliation for COVID volunteers. Doesn't really seem to be lining up. I feel like expanding more on why you don't agree with the numbers, which I actually think Mr. Knapp did to the most that he can, expounded to the most that he can. I think it's important if you're going to scrutinize numbers as your reasoning or use that as your reasoning for voting no, to advise the public more to the nuances of why you made that decision. I also think, and I hate to use this term, but it is almost hypocritical to scrutinize those numbers exclusively for Dr. Beck's contract when in May, I don't believe anyone here went into the idea or explored the idea of going out for a competitive bid for Schenck Price. And again, there's a really
nifty graphic circulating that shows we've spent $640,000 on them since we've appointed them in February of 2021, and that number is only skyrocketing. So again, I asked last month, my morals were spoken to, I guess you can say. I asked how much we've spent to date for attorney services on the newly revised policy regarding the book issue, challenges, whatnot, and I still haven't received a number. So I'd love to hear that and see how that plays into this number, because I think it's very obvious where our actual issues lie. Mr. Morris, when we spoke to the $475,000 reflected in those overload stipends, you mentioned it was contractual. Genuinely asking, I don't understand what that means. If you can maybe let us know exactly how that number is somehow lessened by that, what percentage of it isn't contractual. If you can explore that, I'd appreciate it. And lastly, I just want to say congratulations to Dr. Beck. 5 years is a long time. I look forward to you working with this school district, continuing your work with this district. I have found that you have been very receptive to communication. As a parent, as an advocate, I appreciate you. I will also say, too, there were rumors of you exploring other opportunities, and rightfully so. And I think that knowing, to speak to the points you just spoke to with turnover and whatnot, I don't blame you. But this is your home now. For the next 5 years, this is your home. So I just ask as a parent that you do everything you can to not only advocate for my child, my children, and every other, but also to advocate for the teachers and staff who might not be in your position of security. And I think now that your job is secure, we would appreciate you leading us as we need you to. Thank you.
Dr. Jennifer Rogoff, 1 Millstone Court, specifically regarding the co-curricular advisors and the information that was edited this evening. So that's what brought me out here, seeing one of our beloved staff members who's been conducting our jazz band in almost 30 years. Sorry to call you out, Doc G. She started in infancy, but certainly to see her longevity stipend accidentally omitted was troublesome. More troublesome was the fact to see that parent-funded column under the marching band. I've been standing up here talking since my daughter Charlotte was a freshman. She marches with a different organization now, the United States Navy, but I'm still here talking about the marching band and their needs and the needs of the students in that organization. They are a feather in your cap. They go out there, they leave it all on the field, they win awards wherever they go, and to see we're still, without the trailer and things like that, and the thought that perhaps that the parents would have been responsible for getting them to competitions was just honestly heartbreaking for all the hard work that those kids have put in. So I appreciate having those co-curricular advisors in place, so we'll start this September. The kids can hit the ground running with those organizations that are so necessary, and thank you for the changes that were made this evening prior to voting. Thank you.
Hi, Jen Hamilton, 37 Holland Circle. I wanted to speak on 16.32 bylaws, policies, and regulations for first reading. It looks like there is a new regulation on grading policies that's being updated. I have a lot of questions about this because it's completely unaligned with what the current policy is at the elementary level. And so I am questioning whether this new policy is superseding and changing what's currently going on at the elementary level, or if this is an old policy that's being updated in some ways, but it's not quite meeting what the elementary level is because it was never changed when that change happened. So that's my question. And that, I'm sorry, was 2624 was the regulation number on that policy. I also, because I'm here, it's not technically a agenda issue voting item, but I'm gonna renew my request that you guys give committee reports. We just had a great presentation on communication with the district and all of the things that we can do to increase communication with our district. One of the things that you guys at this table can do to increase your communication with the district is to give us committee reports when you have committee meetings. You come here, you're ready to vote, you vote quickly, which is understandable because you've already discussed, but it leaves us completely out of it. We don't know what was discussed in those meetings. And so once again, I'm just going to renew that request that you please give us committee reports at this meeting. And finally, I also came here to speak about the marching band issue. I know that that was changed this evening. I recognize that, but I was told by a school employee unrelated to the band to my face that this was happening 3 weeks ago, that the band was not going to be, that transportation was not going to be provided for these competitions. And that was told to a group of parents at marching band camp by a school employee that was unrelated to the band. And so that concerns me. Once again, if we knew what was discussed in committee, we might have an answer to that question. But I just want to reiterate how important our music program is to this district. Thank you so much. And congratulations, Dr. Beck.
Anybody else? Motion to close.
Motion.
Thank you. Second? Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll just comment on Caitlin's question about the overloads. When you look at the overloads, the ones that say 66%, those were contractual with the special education. They were teaching an extra class, and that was done 2 years ago, Angela? Yeah, 2 years ago. So it was done in a phase program to catch up, and then when that is caught up, they will have the full going forward. The others are all for specific reasons, either as it states in there, extra class, so they get paid to teach, I think it's 5 classes, and then the extra classes to one they're getting paid for, and or maternity leave, leave of absence, what have you. So it's not, there's a shortage, not shortage of teachers, there's specific reasons for shortages, and then the others is contractual to catch up to the negotiated agreements. Yep.
And I would like to speak to the marching band. I don't know what employee was speaking on our behalf, but I could tell you exactly what happened. And that was a miscommunication between the high school office and central office. The marching band competitions were submitted to administration as field trips and should never have been that. So the mistake that occurred was the miscommunication that was not caught at that time, but there was never any intent. It was not changed this evening. The correction was made this evening. It was clarified this evening, but there was never any intent to have the marching band competitions be parent-funded. We had the conversation today, Ms. Black and I had the conversation today, that it's a competition. That is a co-curricular activity that has competitions, just like the basketball team, just like the football team, and so on. So that's how we would treat their competitions, and there was never any other intent. And regarding the grading policy changes, Ms. Hamilton, I get where you're coming from. The main factor, and Tara, if I miss anything, please, the main factor that we were considering tonight, so when the class rank policy was passed through 2 readings and finally passed last meeting overall, we needed to wait for that to pass to then revise other policies that mention class rank. So what you're seeing in the policy change this evening is anything that mentioned class rank. The word class rank was removed where appropriate. And our regulation regarding grading still reflects the elementary levels. If I'm missing anything, Tara, please.
Well, just in addition to that, one thing when we were looking at student handbooks, we noticed that one of the grading policies that you're talking about, I think also has a section that during COVID, it was revised specifically for COVID. So it says things like averages below 50 will count in the grade point average as a 50. So it wouldn't drop below a 50. So obviously think of those beginning days of COVID where maybe kids weren't showing up to the computer. They could have had a 13 average potentially, and that could have changed their grade for the entire school year and caused them to, have a non-passing score. Those things were changed at a time when, that I wasn't here for that. Understanding those changes were relevant, but then reverting back to be in line with the student handbook is really what the changes are additionally doing, in addition to what Dr. Beck said. But this particular policy that you pointed out does have some things that can be updated for the elementary. So between this first and second read, we'll take a look through that lens as opposed to just making sure there's alignment in student handbook. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
If I could just add regarding, those policies, I was going to say along the lines of what you were suggesting as well, Mrs. Rossi, but there are a couple things that we've already noted for next committee that we will need to address to align with also honoring student achievement or honor rolls. These are, you have to understand, there's very old policies that we're looking at now. So we will definitely get those reflected between readings, and I personally don't see a problem with moving forward the first reading if everyone is in agreement. There was something else I was going to say. I think that's everything. Oh, in regards to the committee reporting, we didn't report out of policy and personnel because largely what was discussed was covered by Dr. Beck and Mrs. Rossi tonight. But the committee notes are available on board docs. The only other policy that was addressed at length was regarding the recording and broadcasting of board meetings. And we did come to a consensus that policy was followed, but it will be upheld and revisited as needed for further action. And what's important to know is that if recording becomes a harassment issue, it becomes a law enforcement issue, and we take that seriously as a board, and so it will continue being an ongoing discussion if needed. But those notes are there if anybody would like further information.
Where they are on board
Where are
docs?
they on board docs, was the question? They should be there. Okay. Is that?
I'll check with our administrative.
Yeah.
It's just hard because we might have access that you don't, like I can see it, but it should be there under library. It has August 15th, all of the, okay.
Okay, moving on, if no one has anything else. Okay, can I get a motion to move personnel and policy 16.1 to 16.37?
Motion.
Thanks, Christine. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Walter. Discussion. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Pelleshi,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes to everything except for 16.15. I have to abstain.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Okay, on to 17, curriculum and instruction. Motion for 17.13.
Motion.
Second?
Lauren? Yeah, thank you. Discussion. Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Pelleshi,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. 18, finance. Motion for 18.1 through 18.11.
Motion.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Christina. Discussion. Joanne, when you're
Ms.
ready.
Collier,
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Pelleshi,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. And lastly, 19, operations. Motion.
Motion.
Thanks. You, second?
Second.
Thanks, Vanessa. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael, Mr. Pelleshi,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Does anybody have any old business? New business? Okay, moving along. Okay, public comment number 2. Public comments are invited on all matters pertaining to the district. Please state the, skip that part. Please state, your name, municipality, and group affiliation, if appropriate. For the record, each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. Once you have had the allotted 3 minutes to speak, you won't be permitted to speak again. All statements will be directed to me as presiding officer. The board or the administration may or not respond to any questions or comments after conclusion of public comment.
Angela DeLucia, Sparta Education Association, Sparta, New Jersey. Good evening. I am the proud president of the Sparta Education Association. I am here tonight to start a new tradition of sharing positive news with the board and the community. That doesn't mean you won't see me at the podium if issues should arise, but tonight I'm here to laud the members of the SEA for the remarkable humans that they are. As you know, our members work hard to ensure that the success of our students in the Sparta School District as a whole. Many of our faculty and staff are celebrating many things. Some are brand new, some will earn tenure next week, some have served this district for 10, 20, or even 30 years. But did you know that Mark Miola was honored as the 2023 STEM Teacher of the Year, that William Brennan and Suzanne Jaravalov were awarded for their excellence in teaching Russian by the American Council of Teachers of Russian, that Melissa Fitch traveled to Europe with a group of educators from the New Jersey Holocaust Education Commission, that Dr. Deb Giannuzzi has been asked and accepted to deliver the opening remarks for music majors at Rutgers University this year. Did you know that Sparta High School is one of the few high schools in the state offering a math elective in data science, and Andrew Bayless brought that here? Did you know that Rosie Bayless is bringing reading literacy to her math classes this year through a grant from the SEF? Did you know that new state-of-the-art computers have been installed in Lisa Tafuri's architecture and 3D printing lab through a collaboration with Lisa, Dr. Wilson, and the SEF? That the SEA leadership team attended a 3-day training on various topics, including membership morale and community engagement. These are just a few of the highlights from this past summer, and I look forward to sharing these accolades with you each month. Our educators, support staff, while they may not have been officially in their buildings, have been planning, writing curriculum, attending PD, and getting ready for the upcoming school year all summer long. They have also traveled to amazing places like Paris, Rome, Dublin, Grenada, Ohio, and Cape May with friends and family. They have read hundreds of wonderful books in an effort to model literacy for their students. Some of our members have gotten married, some have had children, some have become grandparents and aunts and uncles. 3 of our security guards, Sue, John, and Keith, have been protecting and serving our students and staff for 5 years already. And let us not forget that some of our members work 12 months, our secretaries, athletic trainers, and IT staff. Without them, our buildings, programs, and technology would just not function. As summer comes to an end, we now switch gears, and we're ready to greet our colleagues and welcome back our students. And on behalf of the members of the Sparta Education Association, we look forward to the successful start of this school year.
Caitlin Gagnon again. I want to thank Mr. Morris. I really, really, really appreciate you answering my question. I know sometimes you and I don't see eye to eye, but I really do appreciate it when I get answers. So thank you very much for that. Moving forward, this is nice. Okay, I did look at the numbers though. And just for the high school, the overload stipends, only the 100%ers, we're still looking at like over 20 out of 40. And I did the math, quick math, terrible math, I probably got it wrong, but it was around 300,000. So it's still a significant chunk of that. So I'm just curious, can maybe someone speak to that? Were these, opportunities that we could have hired? Did we have trouble securing teachers and staff for this? I'm sure, that might have something to do with it. And I'm sure you already explored this option, but just some feedback to the public so that we understand why. And I think that also kind of lends to what we were talking about, Dr. Beck specifically, about the turnover, and Ms. Collier about the ratings, because obviously from Ms. Rossi's presentation, that has less to do with our student performance, and maybe more to do with the culture. You know, maybe there are issues that we need to be addressing in terms of not just numbers, not just student performance, not just achievement post-COVID, but how we can not only retain the amazing staff that Ms. DeLucia just described, but also encourage new staff and new teachers to come here and incentivize them to come here and figure out if they're not, why they're not. So that's all I had to say about that. Maybe just some elaborating would be wonderful. I'm sure you'll get to me. And then the other thing I wanted to say, speaking to the committee minutes, I did have a chance to look through those, and I just want to make a note of two things. The recording policy that was discussed, I know many parents had a problem with that for many different reasons, foster reasons, personal reasons, history of students being victimized. There's plenty to go around. Just because something is legal does not mean that it is tasteful. And I think that's something that the Board of Education should be keeping in mind as we look through policies like this. I think that obviously, I will say personally, someone had, not me, I've submitted one Oprah to date, someone had Oprah'd the correspondence regarding that because of their concerns. And I was notified that my husband was actually named for approaching the gentleman responsible for recording at one of the last meetings, which is an incident there were 3 witnesses to. And he just very calmly said, I don't think this is a good look. I don't think this is a good idea. There's kids in this audience. That Oprah request shows that he was accused of harassment, which seems to be a recurring theme with members of this board, the word harassment. And that was even mentioned in the committee meeting minutes, although Ms. Collier didn't mention that part. So let's not throw around the word harassment lightly. That's an insult to people who actually are harassed. And I will say I'm very happy, whether it's because his wife is running or not, that Mr. Dumbert chose not to record tonight, because again, just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's tasteful. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jake Hamilton, and I'm in 8th grade. As I'm in 8th grade, I'm almost in high school, and as I live relatively near the high school, I'm interested in riding my bike to school, though I unfortunately realized that policy number 5514 talks about student use of vehicles on school grounds, while students in grades 10 to 12 are allowed to drive to school if they have their license, of course. That same policy states students are not permitted to ride bicycles to and from any school in the district. I'd like to ask you to look at that policy and consider making a change. I'm also sure I'm not the only student that would positively be affected by this change. Thank you for listening.
Jen Hamilton, 37 Holland Circle. I just wanted to take a quick second to thank the board, whether you voted for or against the new contract for Dr. Beck this evening. I think the process that took place tonight is exactly what we need. When you guys are making your decisions, when you're sitting here, the public is so kept out of so many decisions that are made, and it was so refreshing to hear the reasons why you were voting for or against this particular contract, and I really appreciated that. So whether or not the public was for or against it, whether or not you were for or against it, the process that took place tonight, I think, was really healthy, and I appreciate that. And I just wanted to thank you for that.
Motion to close?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll comment to Jake, you know, we aren't a walking, biking district. Like, there's a lot of those within the county, Newton being one of them. Newton's probably 90% of their students walk or ride. You know, their town is laid out a little different than ours. It makes it more feasible and accessible to them. It's something we can look at. I mean, it'd probably be a case-to-case basis, you know, for where you're going, crossing a busy county road. It's, you know, things would have to be looked at, waivers and what have you, but we'll look at it.
And I will speak in a little more detail to the overload stipends. It's very difficult to make a broad statement because it doesn't apply to all stipends, but there's different situations that you see when you see overload stipends. So those different situations, and I can't speak, you know, specifically and individually, but those specific situations could include the fact that we needed to run one more section of a class. That's the easy one. And all the teachers that teach that class have a full schedule. So to run another section, we got to run an overload, or 2 or 3, depending on how many sections there are. There's that. And then what you see a lot of this evening in particular is, and they're not specified necessarily, but you'll see leave replacements that we either did not have time to fill and need to be covered immediately, or tried to fill and can't fill because of lack of applicants at this time of year and so on. And certain certifications, just take a very specific certification like a special education science certified teacher. Good luck, right? Trying to find one of those. So we try to figure out how to cover those types of courses, whether it be short-term or long-term. And then when it comes to the special education overages, as Mr. Morris explained, those are being phased in over the three-year part of the contract, where because the contract was different for special education teachers, in an effort to bring them up to equality, it was a phase-in process. So you see 33% last year, 66% last year of the overage, 100% next year. And then as far as being fiscally responsible with that, first of all, we would not run an overage if it was not necessary to run a class for our students. That's number one. But number two is, even as early as this year, based on circumstances that presented themselves later, and as we move forward to looking at next year's budget, we have already begun looking at if there are 5 10th grade English overloads, let's say, then maybe we should just, instead of doing the overloads, although cheaper, but might be more efficient to add another staff member. 5 overloads, $60,000, staff member, $75,000 plus benefits. That's where we got to start to figure out when it benefits us and when it doesn't.
I just wanted to speak quickly. We talked a lot tonight about rank, and I appreciate Lauren kind of elaborating and clarifying some things on that. I think it's important just because it's something that we all see. I wanted to just provide a little more information on that, to just give you some facts and details to kind of draw from. We were talking a little bit earlier about different ranking systems, and some that are really reliable and common, and some that aren't, unfortunately. So we are aware that something like Great Schools is tied to Zillow for some reason. It's not great data. An example of that is like our lowest performing school in that realm is Helen Morgan, and one of the reasons for that is because the correlation of students to guidance counselors, without having it in front of me, it says something like, we have 782 students for 1 guidance counselor. Well, if you know Helen Morgan, there's not 782 students in that school. And then the opposite is the highest ranking school on Great Schools is Alpine, and one of the reasons for that is their 10 out of 10 test scores. But Alpine is grades K through 2, and they don't take standardized tests that's available to the public in that way. So those are things that the public might not know that we do and that we talk about. When we look at Niche and U.S. News and World Report, those are 2 pretty reliable reports that we do draw from. In Niche, we have an A- rating as a district, and all of our schools are within that A range. U.S. News and World Report, their 2023 report is coming out soon, but right now we only have our 2022 data, which gives us an overall score of 89 out of 100 points. That puts us in the top 10% for schools ranked nationally, and within the top 20% for schools ranked in the state of New Jersey, which also is one of the most competitive states, ranking in the top 3 spots across the country annually. We were able to look at some quick stats for 2023, and that's provided by the National Center for Educational Statistics. There are common statistics that they look at across these ranking systems. Some we have control over, some we don't. The things we do have control over are things like graduation rate, which we currently, with those quick stats for 2023, we rank in the top 5% within schools of New Jersey. And our overall and individual testing points for standardized test data ranks us again in the top 20% of schools across the state. And finally, the things that really affect ranking, again, that we can control are things like AP data, how many students are taking AP assessments, their scores on things like that, graduation rates, and standardized test scores. So those are all things that we're constantly looking at, tracking, and seeing, how we can balance improvements. And obviously our goal is always to continue to do better and serve our students in the highest productive way. But I just wanted you to know some of that, because those are things that we know and talk about, but are not always things that are common for the public. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, moving on. The good of the order.
I have one thing. As a parent of 3 students in the district, I try to involve myself as much as possible in all areas of the district. And even doing that, unfortunately, I don't get to build relationships with many of the teachers. So I wanted to make a comment about a teacher that is resigning, and it's not just because, if I could comment on everybody who's resigning or retiring, if I had a story to share, I absolutely would. But I wanted to make a comment about Tyler Vandenberg and his resignation. He's been an amazing teacher. He got kids excited about music. Kids who were not excited about music became excited about music. And he collaborated with a lot of PTO events that many of our students participated in. So I just wanted to wish him nothing but the best in his next venture, and thank him for his time here at the district and getting kids excited and involved in music.
I've just got one, actually 2 things. Jake, it's always nice to hear from our students. Takes courage to get up there in front of everybody, and we appreciate it. So thanks for your feedback, buddy. Second, just want to wish our administration, staff, students, families good luck in the upcoming school year. I know my kids are somewhat excited to go back. Mom's probably more excited than the kids are, but I just wanted to wish everybody good luck. Have a good year.
And I just wanted to thank Ms. DeLucia, because I love celebrating the wins. I think that's fabulous. And part of the 91 action items of the communications objective is identifying people that can help share the story and of Sparta, and to really be celebrating those wins, sharing them on social media, and sharing through all of our district stakeholders. So while I knew a lot of those, some of them I didn't, and I think it was really great to hear. And I appreciate so much what the staff has done over the summer, and I hope you're refreshed and ready for it to start a new year, and we're excited for you and excited for our students and excited to continue serving together as a board with our administration. So thank you and good luck, everybody. And the buildings look great as well. Reported back to me because I'm very pregnant and could not walk through, but my children told me. Thank you.
Anybody else? No, I'll just finish with, on behalf of the entire board, we would just like to wish Wendy happy birthday. Tonight's her birthday. So, dedicated, coming out on her birthday. Very exciting birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right. Motion to close.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second, me, good.
You almost made it, Wendy. Almost made it through.